Okay, so now we're going to make some pyramids, which I've seen a lot, and that, like I said, I don't know that they're called pyramids. That's just what I call them, they're a little trickier to make because you do have to literally freehand cut these triangles and kind of make them fit together. And I've cut a few already, but I'm going to show you how I cut them. And you have to. It's a real go with the flow kind of pattern. It's a real Zen kind of pattern. So we should all take a deep breath and. You know, breathe in through our nose and out through our mouths. So I'm going to get some white and kind of and get it nicely pressed. And I'm making just a smaller section. It's just easier to work with. And the same thing with my black. Just going to make a smaller section that's easier to work with. And I'm not going to be doing these two at a time. It's really like you have to cut the first one and you cut the other ones to the first one and then to the second one. And in a second you'll see what I'm talking about. So it's more of an isosceles triangle versus these are right triangles. Thank goodness I took geometry. So I'm going to cut my first isosceles triangle. So you know. This base is not as straight as it could be, but it's straight enough. So let's see. I'll cut one like this and one like this. Okay, so there's my first little isosceles triangle. And yes, these are not these, you know, don't break out your, you know, compasses because it's not the same angle. But that's okay, because I'm only worried about one side. I want to give myself a little bit of wiggle room. I'd rather make it a little bit too big than a little too small, because I can always trim down. Adding is another story. I want to make a triangle that I'm going to sew on in the opposite direction. Again, here's my other isosceles side. Sew on in the opposite direction. When we sew them together, they're going to sew like that, okay? And yes, I realize there's extra. Better extra than not enough. Okay, so I'm going to sew them. They have one side that's the same because I use that one side as my template of sorts. And this is actually going to be really important information for when we do curves, believe it or not. This whole idea that you can use one piece of cut fabric as the template for a second piece of cut fabric. So see, I have my first little pyramid combination there. And I'm going to press it to one side. And just in the interest of things staying, you know, relatively even, I'm going to trim it. I could then trim this, the triangle point, so that it's, you know, I don't want to square it off. Okay. And I could trim this too down the road, this edge, because this is going to lose. It's going to lose this little bit, but I don't need to right now. And then I'm going to do the same thing. It'd be better if I did it this way because it'd be less waste. But this time I'm going to do it with the white, and just to make it easier, I'm going to take a section out. So here again, now I'm using this black as my template of sorts. So I've got the angle right. Now I'll just cut it in the other direction, sew it on. I often flip it over to make sure I got the angle right. Yeah, got the angle right, sew it on, and then there'll definitely be more trimming to do.